You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their missions through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media.
Jenny, today we've got a spotlight episode.
Yep, today we are talking with Briana Shepard, the Director of Marketing and Communications at Tulsa Garden Center at Woodway Park. And we invited Briana on the show because her team recently won the 2024 APJ Marketing Excellence Award. So they were able to launch really a successful fundraising campaign during a time of kind of community crisis. So she's going to share to us how they were able to do that through successful storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, Tulsa Garden Center it's a small operation. Briana's a marketing team of one. So I think this is a good episode to listen to if you're in that situation, limited funding, marketing dollars, limited team size, kind of hear how she's maximizing what she can do across social media. And also, I like the conversation that we have is they do have a little bit of money and they invested it all in radio. So we're going to kind of talk about the tactics behind that. One other thing, hey, if you're out here listening, if you're in marketing or leadership at a zoo, aquarium, museum, botanical garden, and you've got something to share with the rest of the community, the cultural attraction world, we'd love to have you on. So if you'd be interested in being a guest and doing a spotlight episode with us, you can find our information at marketingattractionspodcast.com. All right, let's get into it. All right, Briana, thanks for making the time to join us here on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. All right, so tell us about your journey. How did you get into the public garden space?
Well, certainly wasn't on my 5-year plan. It found me in a way. So I come from an education background. I've been teaching English as a second language to adults for about 20 years. Did a little bit of that in the social work world and needed a change and was going through a million job listings, came across this one. I love the park. It's a special place for me. And this job listing really checked a lot of my boxes and I wasn't anticipating that. So when I applied, I actually highlighted my volunteerism because it wasn't my professional background that really made me stand out for this role. It was my work with a local cat shelter and doing a lot of their marketing, volunteering for 20 years. So when I sent in my cover letter, I said, sure, pay attention to my professional work, but really pay attention to my volunteerism. And the rest was history. I toured and they had a garden cat here that had just moved in a few weeks before. And so when they offered me the job, I was like, well, they just hired a cat. So, I can't say no. I have to join. So, but in my education background, I've been communicating about communication for almost 20 years. And so I'm using that background in a very different way here, kind of analyzing word choice and how you present things. And that's what I've been doing in the classroom for so long. So I think storytelling has been something I've always been interested in. That comes into play quite a bit here. And I have little memories of when I was a kid of little interactions, my dad and I riding a bike up a hill and a gentleman riding his bike down, and my dad and the man nodded at each other. I was 7 years old maybe. And I thought, what just happened? What did I just see? There's some exchange. I don't understand what I saw, but I know they were exchanging something with each other. And so I asked my dad, why were you all nodding at each other? He said, we're just saying hello without words. And I think that started my fascination with communication.
Yeah. And then with that education background too, I guess talk to us a little bit about how maybe you're able to bring the garden to maybe or maybe to those plant novices, right? Who don't really know much about what the garden provides.
Yeah. So I'm a perfect example of not knowing much about gardening. I have always relied on my family, hey, this plant's doing this. I don't even know what this plant is. What do I do? And here I'm learning. So I ask a ton of questions, and then I get my answers, and then I figure out how to present that information out to the public in an educational and entertaining, engaging way. I think the public is learning real time with me. So that's an interesting journey to go on. I love running into people in real life, and they say, hey, this thing you posted about the other day, I had no idea. I'm like, I had no idea either. Isn't that amazing? So because I'm constantly learning here, I get the opportunity to be figuring out how to share and teach these things in a way. I have a lot of great teachers here that I work with, even if they may not consider themselves teachers, they all are.
That's great. And then in your role as the director of marketing and communications, it's you, right? You're the team of one. And I think that's probably more common across a lot of gardens and cultural attractions than large teams, right? So tell us about how you're able to accomplish all the things that you do in your day with just you.
Yeah, well, it's just me. I'm a one-man band. So just today, for example, I make sure all of our signs are up to date for what we're promoting, like here on the grounds. I do a social media post every day, and I do those in real time. I don't schedule them. I know people probably think I'm crazy, but I like it to be very authentic. I want to be aware of what's going on in the world and not have something post that is kind of not appropriate for what's going on. So I made a post this morning, conferred with team about different things we have going on. Then I'm doing this interview, and then I'll travel and do an actual TV interview this afternoon. So this is a busy talking day, but there's also a lot of, I do a lot of website back-end work. I will talk with people in the park, just that one-on-one in-person communication that you don't plan for. It just kind of happens. Sometimes we'll lead tour groups through. There's lots. I make lots of graphics. So that's not my expertise. I'm not a graphic designer, but I can clip some things together. And so I do a lot of flyers and stuff for our events and classes, and just checking in on social media. And so that's kind of a broad overview of what it looks like. And then just experimenting with different things. Like I said, being an outsider, I'm constantly learning, but I'm also thinking about how would I find out about this information? How can I get what we're doing out to more people? So our social media, before I came, there were accounts. They were not very active. They were not consistent. And so we do lean really heavily into the social media world. And that's proven to really be great for us. And I can talk a little bit about that later if you want me to. Kind of how
let's talk about that. Do you have kind of your go-to channel? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Or is it kind of all across the board? If you could only live with one social media channel, what would it be and why?
Well, I personally love Instagram, but I'm a very visual person. So we weren't using Instagram before, and we were barely using Facebook. Those are the two that we use. I maybe someday will learn the others, but these two seem to be serving us well. So we post every day. I make sure the content is not the same every day. So I'll keep it nice, and I feel keep it balanced. So some historical pieces, some things about what's happening in the garden, anniversaries, just fun events that we have coming up. I even try to balance our colors. I'm not doing the 3-picture sunset things or anything like that, but I want to make sure that I'm not really pink heavy for my last 8 posts, but I just need that visual balance there. So we cross-post everything to Facebook, and we really lean heavily into the Facebook events. We'll do collaborative posts on Instagram, which are great, and the additional host on the Facebook events, I think, is fantastic. You just have to kind of handhold some people who may not know to look for that and to accept that. But that increases your visibility, not just your market, but your audience, but their audience as well. So we have 16 plant societies that operate out of here. And so we try to give them as many tools and support as we can through those social media channels and beyond. I'm actually getting ready to do a boot camp for them, like a social media website boot camp. So I sent out a big survey about where do you feel like you're lacking? What support do you think you need? What do you use? Do you have any social media channels? Do you have a website? A lot of them don't even have a website. And so right now I'm analyzing kind of where it seems they need the most help. And then we'll have a big meeting. This is where my teacher part comes in. We'll have a big I'm calling it a boot camp. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but we're going to have a big kind of training where they bring their computers. They can bring 2 officers from their club, and we're going to help them out. I'm going to send them home with homework, as I do, and tools to help them kind of step up their game online. Even if that could just be photos. Your photo doesn't have to be taken today. It could have been taken a month ago, and you can share it today, but you don't have to tell everyone that. It's just simple little things like that people don't realize. It doesn't have to be as difficult as we make it. It can be nice and simple and organic. So,
in this boot camp that you're providing, I kind of got 2 takeaways already. You mentioned Facebook events, and then you mentioned you kind of have to nudge your audience, and I kind of want to make sure we hit that a little bit on this show. What's the difficulty with Facebook events, and where do you think maybe your audience gets a little lost in that communication process?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily our audience. I think it's the people that we're trying to co-host events with. They may not be as savvy on those platforms. And even when I get co-host requests, I have to make sure and look for it. It's easier for me to see on my computer than it is on my phone. And maybe that's just me. But just a lot of the plant societies right now are older generations that aren't as comfortable with some of the social media platforms. And this goes back to my cat shelter volunteerism. There's a very similar demographic. And so getting them on social media and kind of just guiding them until they feel comfortable to start to navigate these things on their own. As an adult language teacher, I know there's a lot of patience that needs to be involved when working with adult learners of language, of social media, of whatever it may be. So just not getting frustrated and really like step by step showing them, just open this and click here and that's it. You did it, yay, see, that was easy. So just giving them the tools to feel confident to go on these platforms. And they may have like preconceived notions about it. They may get really overwhelmed by it. So I think there's a lot of stigma that can come along with using certain platforms. And some people are resistant to that. So just, you don't to have these accounts, you don't have to buy into all the other stuff. You can just use it for the sole purpose of your business or your organization.
And I think another takeaway that I got was keeping the color palette within your Instagram feed differentiated. Like, I like that. Any more thoughts? Like, just don't make it all pink, or?
Yeah. And well, it's, so if we think of fall or winter in the garden, we kind of think more like browns or nothing, right? But there is actually a lot of color like living in those seasons. You just have to look a little more for it. And so really, like right now, I could be doing tons of color. And of course, there is a lot of color happening. But I also want to balance that with, some just pure greens or some of our facilities on the grounds. So that just, for me, that's going to keep me scrolling. Like if I go onto a page or if I go onto an Instagram profile and I just keep seeing the same post over and over and over, and I see like, I don't know, there's 3 months of one style and then it shifts into another style. I'm like, oh, well, they got a new person on staff or like they have a new plan or something like that. But if it's varied, visually and content-wise, it's going to keep me more engaged to keep scrolling and want to hit that follow button, and then I continue to see those updates.
Yeah, I think you've said this a couple of times probably, but it's putting yourself in that visitor's shoes, right? What they're looking at, what they're engaging with, and I think sometimes we can kind of miss that in marketing because we're looking at the research, looking at the data, what it says, and we're forgetting about what the consumer or ourselves really enjoys and wants too. Mm-hmm. So that's great.
You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast, conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their mission through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media. Attend Media is a media planning and buying agency specializing in zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums. For more information, please visit attend.media. Now, back to Ryan and Jenny.
So, Briana, your team got the honor of winning the Marketing Excellence Award for Small Gardens at the APGA in 2024. Walk us through that campaign. What was kind of the big idea, and why did you win that award?
Yeah, so I've quite an honor, very exciting. Our campaign was called When the Wind Came Sweeping Down the Plain. So we have an arboretum that was started in 1964. And it's, I think, 3 acres, quarter-mile path through. It's a beautiful space. And before I started, an arboretum restoration capital campaign was in progress. And I had drafted up a big e-blast to go out. We've got a nice, I had this email campaign drafted up, ready to go for a Monday morning. And in the early Sunday morning hours of June, I think it was 18th last year, it was Father's Day, we had a derecho come through Midtown Tulsa, which were sustained 100 mile per hour winds, which we're used to tornado winds, but those are over like that. 100 mile an hour winds for 20, 30 minutes, we're not used to that at all. And it wrecked our trees in Midtown. I mean, completely uprooted a lot of the tree canopy. And our arboretum took a really hard hit. It uprooted a 1964 original planting pin oak, and then we also lost a black oak. But the pin oak was a monster. And the park was closed. Basically, all of Tulsa was closed. Everything was shut down. There was no power anywhere. And we had to pause that campaign. We can't ask money for trees when everyone's got a tree on their house and their car. And but we also couldn't pause that because this was an active campaign. We were needing to raise this money for all these improvements. And so what we did is we figured out a way to merge the two. So to continue the arboretum restoration, but to also incorporate the storm effects, the damage, the grieving, the optimism that it would be okay. So we merged all of that together, and honestly, it wasn't until after we'd gone through all of this that we looked back and we said, oh, hey, we did that. It wasn't like we were having sit-down meetings right after the storm, and we were all without power. We all had damage at our homes. Everyone was dealing with all sorts of things. So the way we shifted the campaign to merge the two, the original intent and the what had happened to our city, it allowed us to continue to raise money in a way that didn't disrespect, I'd say, the park, the community, the trees. And yeah, we were closed to the general public for 6 weeks, so people couldn't even come in the park. We had a park and staff had a park outside of the park and walk in. We had to wear branded shirts, so only select people could get to come in. And so just continuing to show, like, this place is still here. It's okay. The public green spaces are so important. And I think that was especially highlighted during COVID. It was, green spaces were one of the few places that people felt safe for a long time to be able to go and be. And not being able to go to this place. Many people come here multiple times a day. They walk their dogs. This is part of their routine. And to not be able to go there can be disruptive, not just to your routine, but to your mental and emotional health. And so being able to show them that it's all still good and we'll be back. You'll be back. It was successful, and successful is for me, a weird word to use for it all. It kept people connected in a really special way. So a deep way.
And what kind of channels, like tactically, how did you communicate your message? What kind of channels were you utilizing?
Yeah. So our e-blast, our e-newsletters, we did end up eventually sending that one that I had drafted with many tweaks in it. I said, you got to give me like 48 hours. Let me sit with it, figure out how to share this. There were lots of news stories. And so we share space. We're a city park. We're a nonprofit in a city park. And so there were lots of news stories that we did and that the city park gardeners did as well. So there was a lot of local media. I'd say, it was all over the news. And we're kind of our park is like the heart of Tulsa. And it's the second oldest park just by a few months. So it's a really special place. So it does get a lot of attention, and did get a lot of attention during the media. But social media, of course, we shared some really hard photos of some major damage. I did a post one day of the pin oak down, and I likened it to the size of it, that it was very humbling. And it was like, you can't really imagine the scale of these until you're standing next to it. And I've never been next to like a beached whale, but I imagine it would be similar to standing next to that, where you're like, I had no idea it was so big. It's, you can't fathom what it's like until you're right next to it in that different situation. I also, when I wrote this post about this downed pin oak, we were going through a familial loss. We lost a family member that day that I wrote that post. And it was like, I am not the person that's going to always separate like my world and my work world. I very much so have everything integrated. Take that as you will. That's something I've learned and accepted about myself. So going through that, I think that also allowed me to kind of dig in to sharing in really human, like true ways.
And then how about, kind of bringing that storytelling through for your new campaigns? You've got your Find Your Spot campaign that's been pretty successful as well.
Yes. Okay. So I'll kind of go back to the Arboretum just for a moment. At the end of that storm, the pin oak got chopped up, taken away, except for the root ball. The root ball remained. And we ended up launching another campaign, a marketing campaign at the very end of that. So the root ball is much, much taller than I am. I mean, I'm not super tall, but it's considerably taller than I am. We posted some signs around it, and we put this on our social media. So we set up an email address for my spot. So we use a hashtag that is find your spot at Woodward Park. And so we made an email address that was my spot at woodwardpark.org. And that was a space for people to share their old photos, their stories, their everything that was special to them. Because this park it's an old park, right? There's a lot of stories. It is not just our park that the people that work here right now. It is generations and generations of people that have been involved here, all the different groups, all the different city employees, the staff at Tulsa Garden Center, the Tulsa Historical Society is right next to us as well. So there are all these people that over the years, this is all of our stories. So we want to collect kind of an uncurated collection of the community's stories, memories, photos. And so we set up an email address. It actually is not, the domain of the email is not the same as our website, because we don't even want it connected to people to have the idea that it's just going to Tulsa Garden Center. We want it, they're talking to Woodward Park, which is bigger than just Tulsa Garden Center. And we've gotten such beautiful submissions, these really cool old photos and these amazing stories. And because the park's story it's the community story. And so we just wanted to have a nice, organized, easy way for people to share those bits. And I know there's so many more stories and photos out there. And I can't wait to keep receiving them. Nothing makes me more excited than when that email inbox dings. Like that's the most exciting thing. But I got that idea from a park or maybe it was a forest in Australia or New Zealand. This organization, they made email addresses for each of their trees for people to report damage. I think it was a large enough space that they couldn't survey everything all the time. And so they set up these email addresses so people would be like, hey, there's a hanger up there. You need to get that down. Or this tree looks like it needs some TLC. But people started emailing their love stories to the trees. And they had no idea that was going to happen. And I heard that story and I was like, that is beautiful. And so it kind of became like the natural next step after we lost the pin oak in that storm, was to set up a collection space for our community's stories. And yeah, it'll continue as long as we need to.
And so this content that people are emailing you, are you repurposing that? Are you sharing that on social media as well? Or
great question. So we do a few things with it. We catalog it. So I've got a little bit of oral history background as well. And so I've learned some archiving tips. So we have all those photos. They're cataloged digitally. We have all the details from the people who've submitted them in a spreadsheet. And every once in a while, we'll share them online. On our social media. And then we have a newsletter that we send out quarterly. And I say newsletter, I know this is a podcast, so people may not be able to see this, but it's like a magazine. So we send that out quarterly.
And for the audience, it's a very good looking magazine.
Thank you. That's another part of my job. I put that together, and that's very, very fun. So we'll do full page focuses on these photos and these stories. And so people get to see their submissions in print, and that's really exciting as well. And then, of course, we're using that to promote the email address, the collection project. So yeah, but it's like really important to us. We try, there were 3 families that lived in this mansion that I'm in, and they will share photos with us that we'll scan in, and then we return back to the family. So we are doing a lot of archiving because it is important to us to not lose that history. And I love doing things like that. That's one of those things that really makes me very happy.
I'm thinking about all those marketing teams out there that like, oh man, what's our content schedule? What's our content calendar going to look like for next month? So I like that. Why not just have your audience, your visitors fuel that content for you? I'm sure you've got just a library of things that you can pull from. So we talked about kind of like some free ways, to market and tell that story, but you guys do have limited marketing funds, like just pure advertising funds. How are you guys investing those advertising funds? What's kind of your strategy?
Yeah, so our marketing budget is next to nothing. So that allows for a lot of creativity, which I think creativity really grows within constraints. So I love that challenge. Some things that we're trying right now. So we have been doing underwriting on our local national public radio station. And that's been really cool. We do 3 ads a month, or they'll run for a month, and I think it's 30 plays a month, 3 different ads they cycle through, and then every month we get to choose one day to be Underwriter of the Day, where we choose one ad that will air every hour. And we're starting our last month of that 6-month, let's give this a shot. Period. And, doing radio is interesting because they'll give us their metrics. They'll tell us how many people are listening, but there's not something for them to click on. There's not are they writing it on their hand when they're driving? Are they talking into their phone saying, Siri, Google Tulsa Garden Center? How are they remembering this information? How do we know if they're following through with what they hear? I don't have the answer to that. But what I do know is that people are telling us that I heard an ad the other day. It's definitely if we're marketing to the people that are already involved in the park, they're hearing it because we're hearing that they're hearing it. So beyond that, I don't know. But it's been a really interesting experiment. And will we do it again? I don't know. I feel like it's been successful. We love supporting public radio. So it feels like a really good fit for us. We also sponsor an Oklahoma gardening show. So that is through a local college here, or a state college, Oklahoma State University. And I think Oklahoma Gardening's been on the air for about 50 years. And because of our partnership with them, and it airs on our local PBS station, so very similar to public radio, because of our partnership, we have a lot of episodes filmed here. We're highlighted off and on, and so and people love that show. I've been on it. I've been on it once, and I got so many text messages that I had no idea how many people watched that once. I think it's Sunday mornings. No idea until I was on it, and I got all these text messages like, "Hey, you're on Oklahoma Gardening." Me talking about gardening. I mean, that's amazing. But so that's a really been a great partnership. Also, we spent a little bit of money there. And then aside from that, marketing wise, putting money towards things, we'll do some Facebook ads here and there. Very sparingly though. I am a big believer in organic reach. and not paying for those ads. But for our big fundraisers, we will do that every once in a while. So, but yeah,
so
really small budget.
Yeah. So you said you've got kind of a few events that go on. You're obviously free to the public, except for some of these ticketed events. So you've got this 6-month radio schedule or the NPR schedule that you're working on to help drive awareness of the Garden Center, but also the specific events that you're driving ticketed revenue for. I think when you've got limited funds, there's only so much that you can do with it. So really ensuring that you're investing it in one channel or one station. We talk a lot about you don't want to spread yourself too thin in any particular channel. So better to go strong all in on one channel than too low across several. But yeah, you're really looking at kind of building frequency with that core audience that you talked about that will come to each one of these events throughout that 4 or 6 month period. So I think that's smart. And then obviously you guys are doing a great job on the organic side with being able to share those stories. So combining that with a format like radio that can also help, creatively share those stories, I think is a great idea.
Well, Jenny, we really haven't talked much about radio on an episode, so maybe we've got to put one in the hopper for that. But it's an arboretum, it's a botanical garden, it's so visual. Why would somebody lean to just a completely non-visual medium like radio, right? But I love the idea. You just talked about frequency, but I love the idea of like supporting those events. It's that constant reminder. I think what radio does a very good job of is providing that awareness, that reminder, then boom, I'm going to come over the top with a big event. Like this is the reason you should come this weekend or next weekend, whatever it may be. So I love radio for our world. I know, Jenny, you do a lot of radio, but I just want to kind of validate the radio idea, even though it's non-visual.
Yeah, great for storytelling.
Well, and I love that point too. We think about, we're recording a podcast right now, like how much people listen to people talking all the time. We actually explored a grant for a podcast last year to kind of tell some of the historical stories of the park with deep dives of experts doing this through the humanities in Oklahoma. And I love, I think some people they're audio people, right? They want to hear. And so, I think there's so much value in just, you're able to do things with your hands, you're able to garden, but you just put your headphones on and listen to the radio or listen to a podcast. I think it's great.
Briana, I'm a podcast fan myself too. All right. So our kind of go-to question to wrap things up here. Briana, what should nonprofit attractions be doing more or less of in their marketing? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that partnerships are gold. And hopefully gardens are doing this a lot already. But, partnering with other gardens, you can do that on social media. You can do kind of challenges back and forth to each other. Partnering with your local artists and makers. We've been doing a lot of that, bringing them in for some of our programming. We partner with our plant societies. But I just think partnering, because when you have no marketing budget, I think I mentioned this earlier, when you're both sharing your events, your things that are going on, the people that are invested in both of your audiences are going to hopefully be engaged, want to come, want to buy into what you're selling, to what you're offering. And you're just doubling your audience with those partnerships. And I think it also shows more credibility as well. Like, hey, this organization is enjoying partnering with this organization. Like, I love this one. I'm probably going to love this one too. So I think there's so much value in that as well. But yeah, partnerships.
Yeah, I like that because you're like leveraging an existing audience within, your partner, right? So having that kind of play to come on over to this side. And this kind of ties into some of the tactics that you were sharing earlier, educating some of these organizations on utilizing social media, getting that co-host on the Facebook events thing. So that ties it all together there. Well, guys, Briana, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys will win an award next year.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed this.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit our website at marketingattractionspodcast.com.